So up first, we're actually not starting with an accounting panel. We are starting with something just a little bit different. So I'd like to welcome to the stage a fine group of people. Come on up. Just I'll introduce you as it goes. You know, part of the goal for EDAS was that we weren't just going to talk about accounting, finance, stuff like that. We were going to fundamentally talk about how enterprise and business is going to be changed over the next 10 years with digital assets. Like it's a big part of how we want to think about this conference. It's sort of educating everybody about this. This panel is here to do this. I'd like to introduce you to a group of folks that work on various infrastructure components within the blockchain ecosystem. So first and foremost, Laurent Tenzer, the Senior Director of Finance and Accounting at Aleo. Go ahead and wave. A startup focused on blockchain privacy. Laurent has been working in the blockchain industry since 2018. She is a CPA with over 15 years of experience and previously held leadership roles at ClearX, Citibank, and EY. Lots of EY friends here. So, Carlos Arena is the Director for Digital Assets at Google Cloud, where he leads the business development and strategy for the digital assets team. Prior to Google, Carlos was a global head of banking sales at R3, where he focused on the deployment of enterprise blockchain applications in regulated financial institutions. And a fun fact, this is really cool, he actually represented Mexico in swimming at the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games. That's super cool, man. Yeah. So I'm not going to get in a race with a shark with you. Joao Reginato is VP of Product Management at Circle, where he leads the stablecoin product team. Joao has over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, leading product engineering teams across the US, Europe, and Latin America. He joined Circle in 2015 and led the build-out of USDC. Amazing product. We are all a huge fan. We'll be talking about it a lot today in light of everything going on in the entire world. And of course, Bitwave supports USDC, so that's a nice, easy one. And finally, Betsebe Botaitis, the CFO and treasurer for Hedera. Betsebe is an accomplished strategist and fintech executive. Prior to joining Hedera, she held various senior positions at renowned companies, including Lending Club and Citigroup. Above all, Betsebe is a passionate advocate for economic equality and the advancement of Latinos in global business. Thank you all so much for being here. So I'm going to start out with Carlos here. Let's, the four of you represent very different parts of the infrastructure story. So can you just lay a little bit of groundwork of like, when we say infrastructure, what do we even mean?
Yeah, I think I would like to start as to our own view that blockchain will become a base layer for a new financial infrastructure of the future. So with that, you need different components to actually achieve that goal. One of those components, which is very, very important, is just the pure foundation as to what is the infrastructure that is required for you to actually run the necessary compute, the necessary storage for a network that needs to be secure, scalable, and sustainable for the future. So what we have been working at Google has been on leveraging our computing infrastructure to actually deploy blockchain networks globally. But in addition to that, we're adding capabilities that are specific to Web3. We want to make the deployment of blockchain networks to be much more simpler, to take out some of the complexities in regards to deploying a node, maintaining a node, all the upgrades that are necessary, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you actually have a click to deploy where you forget about the infrastructure that it's running on? The other one is data. There's a lot of data. There's multiple protocols, and you need to find ways to identify, access, and also build analytics into that data to actually provide information that is necessary. And the last thing I would add is that we are adding best practices in regards to security, scalability, adding multi-party compute, confidential space, and things to make a very secure and reliable network as a foundation. So you start with that infrastructure foundation, and on top of that is that you begin to add different layers. The first layer is the blockchain protocol, sometimes called layer 1. And the layer 1 is required to actually provide the blockchain benefits, such as trust, transparency, auditability, for a network of peers that do not know or trust each other, and they have different governance per network. So you can have protocols or blockchain protocols that are public, permissionless, such as an Ethereum or Bitcoin, and others that are designed and tailored for regulated use cases that require permissioned and private networks. On top of that, you have layer 2s, which are adding capabilities to those blockchain protocols that are solving for additional throughput, lower fees, additional security, and that's something that is added to the layer 1, layer 2 capabilities. And on top of all of that is that you have the actual blockchain applications. The blockchain applications actually provide the transfer of money, similar to Circle. You have business operations, similar to Bitwave, and there's, all of the different components come to actually provide a solution that is decentralized, but it actually provides the trust and security that is necessary for parties that do not know or trust each other to actually interact and transfer either value or data.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful overview. So at a high level, like what we're going to be talking about for this panel is L1s at the baseline. Well, actually, hosting infrastructure at the baseline. L1s is kind of the base protocol level. L2s is a scaling level, a privacy level, any sort of additional capabilities you need on it. And then, of course, the Rails piece of this. So the payment rails like USDC, the infrastructure rails like billing, all that sort of stuff. So Betsabe, I'm gonna come to you next. So you are at Hedera, which is an L1 focused on enterprises. Tell us a little bit about the current state of the art of L1s. So I want to share that with everyone here. What is happening in the L1 world? What's the state of the art? What are we optimizing for these days?
Absolutely. Well, first I want to share something. Preparing for this panel, I thought that it was very innovative to go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT what he thinks about that same question. I don't know how many people had used ChatGPT. It would be great to see if you can raise your hands. Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah, everybody. So I'm so glad. But guess what? I'm just going to read very quickly. It says, as of my knowledge, cutoff of September 2021. And I was, oh my God, you're so behind.
Decades in crypto
yes,
time.
Decades of crypto time. So really, I think that we are still in the first inning for those that play baseball. We are still in the first inning of infrastructure for enterprise infrastructure. And I think that one of the things that I read about ChatGPT were about that the layer 1 infrastructure is evolving rapidly with multiple platforms and solutions available, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. And I can tell you, overall, it was very genetic. So one of the things that is happening and we see in the industry is, in terms of adoption, there is a lack of education. As we can see, I mean, ChatGPT has information on this as of September 2021. But in terms of the architecture itself, what is happening is the focus of, enterprises are really focused on scalability, interoperability, but the most important, trust and governance. Yes, you have in the public layers and the Ethereums and the Bitcoins, you had unknown people, unknown entities doing your consensus mechanism. But in order to be adopted by enterprises, they really want to know who are doing those consensus mechanisms, who am I trusting to really prove the transactions. So it could be millions of data, it could be millions in dollars. So this is really the difference of what Hedera is focusing on. What we are different on is a governing model, when we have a council members who govern and own the layer 1, Hedera. But what we are also seeing in the evolution is the conversations are moving into the interoperability between private and permissionless. How do you really make sure that that ecosystem, the plug and play, and the tools and services that allow you to identify when do you need to be private, when do you need to be permissionless, and how can you collaborate with others? Yeah. How can Hyperledger Fabric collaborate with Hedera, how Corda and other ones? I mean, Corda is the second layer, but these are the conversations where we're going, and I really, really see we're still in the first inning, as ChatGPT didn't know. Yeah. Much information.
I think that one of the big topics for today, over the course of the rest of the day, is going to be permissioned versus permissionless, and how those get bridged. Yeah, because it's just such a critical part of the enterprise story, is how you actually have more confidence in the people that you're interacting with.
Yes, at the end, I think that we all are here, and I can say it, I'm here because blockchain is the layer, the digital layer of trust.
Yeah.
How do you actually build that? That's the main infrastructure that you're focusing. How do you build and deliver trust?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm next going to go to Joao on this. So the high level is, so we talked about kind of the base hosting infrastructure layer, the L1 layer. USDC has done a phenomenal job going after L2s. So this is one of the things where, in order to increase speed and TPS, we're saying, all right, let's both go to other L1s that have higher TPS to better accommodate the commerce transaction that we all think about. But let's also go to L2s where we're able to natively scale to higher volume. So tell us a little about what's the state of the art in L2s? What are you guys seeing? What are you excited about?
Yeah. I'll tell a short story of how we ended up getting to this multi-chain kind of perspective that we have. When we, many years ago, when I was at Circle prior to USDC, we were a consumer-focused company, right? So we were actually building consumer products, and we were running. We wanted to, essentially, as is still the vision of the company, we saw the value in this technology. We wanted to bring that benefit to, billions of users around the world, and we started doing that through consumer products. And we were settling basically cross-border transfers over the Bitcoin blockchain for a while. This is circa 2015, 2016.
I didn't know that. That's deep in the history there. I didn't realize that.
And back in the day in 2016, if you guys remember then, we were having issues with, how Bitcoin was evolving as a piece of infrastructure. We were very interested in the core developer discussions, increasing blocks, making it faster, not making it faster. Anyway, it ended up where it ended up. I think we all know where Bitcoin is today. It has its own value, but it didn't evolve in the direction that I think a lot of people back in the day thought that it was going to evolve. And in having those pain points, I think as developers who were trying to build on top of the infrastructure, right, we did what a lot of developers sometimes do, which is let's try to figure out our own infrastructure if we can find one available for use. And that's how we ended up gravitating towards this idea of stablecoins. And that's the backstory for Circle, building USDC essentially. But then at the same time, we were building USDC on Ethereum. We picked Ethereum. We thought it was the most logical decision back then, and I think you could probably make that decision 1,000 times and it would be the same. But there was CryptoKitties happening at the time as well. This was end of 2017, right? So we were like,
for the first big
well,
NFT pump.
Exactly. We have to pitch it to people that this is going to be, a new dollar platform for developers. A dollar on the internet, scalable, fast. Hold on a second, it's not actually scalable, not actually fast. So for the value proposition to be true, we had to find how it could be true while this technology was evolving, right? Because it was not it's never going to evolve. It was a point in time. And so from the get-go, we started to become a lot interested in everything that was being done in terms of research across all layer 1s and layer 2s. And we started our multi-chain journey, as I call, very soon in 2019, and today USDC is present on 8 blockchains, on the way to be present in 13 very, very soon in a matter of weeks. And we think in the last couple of years then what has happened, particularly on the Ethereum ecosystem is phenomenal, it's fantastic. I think the roadmap and the development and the progression over the roadmap has taken a turn to the pace that I think we in more traditional tech expect, even though we know that it is complicated to evolve blockchains. It's probably the most complicated system to evolve and upgrade in place. But the layer 2s allowed Ethereum to effectively fulfill that promise that was there originally. And today, USDC, in its various forms, native or synthetic in how it works on particularly layer 2s, delivers on that promise of super fast, super scalable, super cheap transactions. There's still a lot more work to be done, but we believe in this vision that all these ecosystems are going to evolve in different ways. Perhaps they're going to specialize in particular use cases. We see USDC, or we see a dollar as the third layer, so to speak, right? Carlos did a good job explaining layer 1, layer 2. But then developers and end users ultimately, they will need the money running on this infrastructure, right? And there are use cases for Bitcoin, for ETH, for the native tokens, but those are probably more on the asset management side of use cases. For the day-to-day use cases that we still have the ambition to support with blockchain,
paying for your Starbucks coffee, doing a cross-border transfer, that still needs the dollars, the euros running on this infrastructure. And we think, therefore, that something like USDC has to be essentially omni-chain, has to work on any infrastructure.
That's absolutely fascinating. I love that story. I love that the first experience was then the CryptoKitties drop, where gas spiked up to like $300 or something like that. It was absolutely crazy. For people
those tests was very expensive. Yeah.
For people that don't know, one of the things that Joao was talking about was back in 2016 there was this fight over the block size on Bitcoin. So if you're kind of newer to the blockchain world, you might not have caught this drama. But it was probably the biggest news back then, where there was this really big debate between should they continue to scale the block size up, which would have a detrimental effect on decentralization because it costs more to run nodes, it's slower to get those nodes around, or should they keep it small and look to layer twos? So we've seen that play out over the years. That also, if you've ever heard of Bitcoin Cash, that was the inspiration for Bitcoin Cash, is it spawned off to go and raise block sizes unlimitedly while Bitcoin stayed behind. So the other thing that you talked about that I think is super valuable for everyone to understand is this idea of use cases driving these L2s. Because there's all these L2s that are out there. They're not all going to exist as carbon copies of each other, right? You have Optimism and you have Polygon as a sidechain. You have obviously Arbitrum and all these. And they all kind of smell a little bit the same. But they're all doing slightly different things. And one of the use cases that we're seeing over and over, and we think is going to be enormous this year and next year, especially for businesses, are privacy-centric chains that are not necessarily fully obfuscated. So privacy-centric chains like Zcash and Monero that do everything they possibly can to obfuscate kind of run into issues with regulators from time to time, and they can be problematic from that perspective. But everyone here who works at a business is fundamentally interested in paying a bill and not having their competitors know how much they paid. So Laurent, tell us the state of the art around privacy-centric blockchains, KYC, AML-centric blockchains. What's happening in that space?
So the main blockchain key infrastructure that we see is the privacy, the scalability, the security. Privacy is the most focused one that we focus on. So I'm coming from Elio. What is Elio? Elio is a developer platform. We focus on the privacy, and we use the zero-knowledge proof technology, advanced technology. We enable developers to build applications on the platform. So our solution for the privacy and the main focus is the zero-knowledge proof. So what is, in general, the zero-knowledge proof? Is actually proving a fact that you want to prove without revealing the underlying data. Which means, for example, use cases if you want to prove you're over 21 without revealing or showing the birth certificate, or being a citizenship without a passport, or for vaccination that you're vaccinated, things like that. These are the general use cases for identity, digital identity. So that's a very heavy focused on that. That's the mainly privacy that we see.
What about, are you seeing privacy use cases around payments and like that type of thing?
Yeah, so payments is one of the main focus in terms of privacy. All the AML, the KYC, KYB, this is the main focus. We use outside consultants as well in order to know who you can pay, who you cannot. The digital identity is very interesting and very heavily in all the regulations, the uncertainty that we have. So my best advice would be to be conservative in the approach. We're trying to do that and save the security, which is the main focus. And that's how, in general, we do the payments.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about this today, but we at Bitwave are kind of coining 2023 as the year of crypto payments. And we'll see if that turns out true or not, but we love a good bet on something like that. And that it gets into this idea of like, how do we start to better obfuscate payments? How do we think about payments? How do we think about identity and who am I paying? And it even gets down to really subtle things like how do I, that traditional ACH 1 penny, 2 penny deposit that does verification, how do you do that on the blockchain? It's actually harder than you would think. So Betsy, let me come back to you here really quickly. One of the things that I think about for infrastructure layer is it also tends to be a de-risking layer for the corporation as a whole. When you are making a decision about what L1 you're going to build on, and you're choosing something like Zcash or Bitcoin Lightning Network, whatever it is, you're making a decision that is going to impact your audit committee, your board, your taxes, all of those types of things. How do you think about infrastructure as part of a corporate risk structure? And how do you think about corporate risk in general and convincing audit boards to let us use crypto?
That's a very advanced use case, by the way. I think that we may not yet be there. Yeah, I think that we're talking about enterprises truly, I mean, Fortune 500, so mid-market. I think that really where is the thought primarily is in the ESG cases. I think that they are trying to do the risks primarily from the ESG perspective. How do you buy and track your carbon trade offsets, your credits? And I really think that that's a very important new use case that we see that is being more and more adopted. How are the decisions made? It's really based on who do you trust, who are part of this network. Of course, there are considerations of cost, interoperability, and scalability. But coming back to your question about audit risk, I think that is an amazing use case, but sadly, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it as much from the enterprises that we work with. Definitely would be, I mean, blockchain is, DLTs is the immutable ledger. Don't we all, as accounting and finance professionals, we would love to see all our transactions there. But it's a little bit, we are a little bit behind.
A little bit early on that.
A little bit early on that.
So the other one, so then Carlos, I'm gonna go to you next on an infrastructure question, which is enterprise infrastructure, which is how do you guys think at Google, because you are a world-renowned consumer of APIs and software, how do you think about the way that APIs and SDKs are evolving in all these different blockchains? It's not, we build a lot of blockchain stuff. It's sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired.
Yeah, and that was a question early on if Google was to build a blockchain, and the reality is that we will never do. Our focus has been on infrastructure and aid those that are building on top of that infrastructure, not necessarily building on the application layer. But we also have had to learn as a large US corporate how to not only talk the talk, we needed to actually execute on our own journey on Web3. So I think Google is one of the largest US corporates that actually have custody of crypto assets. That required a lot of internal education and onboarding of multiple areas across Google, both on the retail and enterprise side, both on compliance, on legal, on tax, on just getting them comfortable as to if we were to support Web3 developers and Web3 entrepreneurs, we also had to, use their services and partner with them and learn with them as to what would be required for a large institution such as ours to actually use those services. Yeah. So that has been our own journey, and it's been, I'm happy to report that those efforts have paid off. And by doing so, we're learning what is required in regards to internal controls, internal governance, and also what is the risk management required to actually hold crypto custody or crypto assets in your balance sheet. And it's been, a useful exercise to actually involve multiple product areas and just aligning with the strict requirements of a regulated entity such as Google.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You guys could use Bitwave. Joao, I want to go to you next because I have the most interesting note here, and I'll be honest, I kind of forgot what it's about, but I'm super excited to hear about it. So I get to learn about it for the first time. So this is talking about stablecoins as infrastructure, and you were telling us about a UNHCR project around stablecoins. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'll steal Carlos' phrase. I'm happy to report right, that there is a hope, I think, for what we are all doing. I think, crypto has been plagued, I think, with sometimes too much of a technology-centric perspective on everything that we talk about. But when you actually zoom out, and that's why I really like the trajectory that we have had at Circle, because we started as people just passionate about moving funds around the world. And when you do that today, you will find that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for improvements, right? And I think as we built USCC and as we went around the world telling this story and trying to help a number of different use cases and a number of different companies to try and utilize it, we eventually found a lot of other people and a lot of other companies that are passionate about this problem of moving money around the world, right? And I think the work that we have been doing with companies like Visa and MasterCard, who are obviously passionate about moving money around the world, and they know that there's a lot of opportunities for improvement in their infrastructure. They are really keen on figuring out how USCC can help with that. MoneyGram, which is another company that is right at that core of moving money around the world, is super interested in that. And when we started talking to MoneyGram, they had a good relationship with the Stellar blockchain. And eventually, collectively, we as this kind of tri-party of companies, we found the UNHCR use case, which is something I think everybody working on this feels tremendously proud of. So this is the Commissioner for Refugees as part of the United Nations, and they as part of what they do, they disperse relief funds for refugees around the world, and they utilized a solution based on the infrastructure that MoneyGram has built, some digital wallets and USC on the Stellar blockchain to basically distribute funds to refugees in the Ukraine as part of the difficulties as part of the war, and it's a small use case in the grand scheme of things from a volume and from an end user impacted point of view, but it's tremendous because it is a real proof that only crypto and only something like a digital dollar running on the internet could deliver the aid in the form that it needed to be delivered. You literally couldn't do that physically, right? And I think it's a great use case, and the more we as crypto companies and industry participants focus on this idea that, where is it painful to move money around the world, and let's go there and try to solve that problem, I think we'll have a good thing.
It's a great use case because it's banking as an infrastructure for all of us. We, in the first world, don't think of it as an infrastructure, but it is. Like the ability to write a check, that's Rails, that's infrastructure. And obviously, that's not what you can do at a refugee camp. Laurent, I'm going to leave you with the last word here. So I promised we'd get back to permission versus permissionless blockchains. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about, the difference between them and how we're seeing interaction. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tight on time, but take it away.
Yeah. So configurable privacy is on-chain, what's off-chain. The main key here is the privacy, but also the regulations and being compliant with all the KYC requirements. So mainly focused on that. I think that would be the key solution here.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone, so very much. This was amazing, informative, inspiring, and educating. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you all being here. All right.